So it looks like our way to get in more people hasn't been fruitful. So let's start with it. So hi everyone, I'm Jeswin, Commissioner SEC. Joining me is Mihir from the Sriram's account. And we have the candidate for AAS, Siddharth Narayan. So the format for the subbox is first we'll have an 8-minute presentation from the candidate, and then we'll, since there are no opposing candidates and he's Yunan, so we won't have the cross questioning. We'll directly go on to the executive council question. Aman, the GenSec or the interim AS is here, so he'll have a few executive council questions, and then we'll move on to the questions which the audience have submitted beforehand in the link as well. So I guess we can go ahead with this. So I think okay, yeah. So that your time starts when you can start your presentation. You have 8 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So, hi, I'm Siddharth, third year undergraduate student from engineering physics. I'm contesting for the post of academic affairs secretary. So, now let me move on to my. Can you move on to the next slide? Thank you. So, I'll start with my vision. So, my vision is to create a very inclusive and self-sustaining environment where everyone should have the freedom and the right tools to explore, learn from their experiences, and then choose from an array of diverse opportunities. And the next vision is to kind of improve the research culture in our institute through one, spreading awareness about existing things, and the next thing is to kind of provide them exposure to research opportunities at a very early stage. Then the next thing would be to improve the academic awareness by kind of facilitating platforms for peer learning and mentoring. Uh, Now we move on to the next slide. Okay, so coming to my credentials, so I've been in the placement team as a core and placement coordinator for a couple of years. Then I was also a part of the Student Legislative Council in the capacity of a department legislator for engineering physics for a year. And during that period, I was also a member of the Standing Committee on Co-Curricular Affairs. And I've spent about a couple of years in Sarang as well in the professional shows team. So I kind of believe all these experiences put together has shaped up me quite well to take up this, task of being the academic affairs secretary. So we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, the next one. So I'm going to be covering my proposed initiatives. I've put them into various buckets of academics, the career development cell, and finally coming to interns and placements. So we'll start with academics. So coming to academics, the first thing is the academic mentorship cell. So what this will be is that this will be a new vertical under the academic affairs secretary. So the idea here is to improve the academic environment and to address the students' academic and professional needs via having a department-wise team structure with A, there'll be a student head, B, there'll be student mentors, and there'll be some kind of coordinators facilitating the process of mentorship. And you'll also have faculty advisors for every department. So this initiative will be first piloted with the undergraduate for the undergraduate programs. Then, looking at the response and the way in which it is evolving, we'll extend this to the MTech and the MSc programs. So that is the idea with respect to this. Then coming to the comprehensive UG study guide. So this will be a compilation of all the all the preparatory material for courses from every department. So you'll have a lot of courses and a lot of for these courses you'll have assignments, study material, textbook, quiz papers, and etc. So most of these things already exist in the drive folder of the legislators of the department. So the idea here is to compile all those and put it in a Google Drive, which will be the Google Drive of the Academic Affairs Secretary's SMail account. So yes, that will be it, and I'll kind of achieve this by forming an executive committee for this year. Then coming to the next one is a substitute for the CS 1100 program. So right now, all the freshmen from every department who are exempted from CS 1100 do not have an option. Only some of them do have an option to pursue a 12 credit programming course in their first semester itself. So over here, the idea is to kind of make everyone eligible to take such a course through the consent of teacher method of enrollment of courses. So that is the idea. We move on to the next slide. The next thing is a course titled Skill for Personal and Professional Development for the MTech and MSc students. It will be a part of the curriculum. This will be along the lines of the life skills course that is being taught in the undergraduate curriculum, and the introduction to research, which is there as a part of the MS curriculum. So yes, this will kind of make sure that their transition from their undergraduate life to postgraduate life within IIT Madras is done upon smoothly, and they'll also learn a lot more interpersonal skills. So that is the idea over here. Next thing is a proposal for a BTech plus MS degree. This will be an option which is additional to the existing department dual degree and the IEEE programs. So here, how this will be facilitated is that the students will be given an option to obtain an MS degree based on the quality of their DDP. So that is how it's going to be facilitated. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, now we'll move on to career development cell. So the first initiative would be a formalized preparatory forum for competitive exam or basically standardized tests like GRE, GMAT, and the CAT. So here, these forums will basically be platforms for focused assistance to aspirants. So basically, people who are not really in a social circle where they have a lot of people taking these tests, they'll be able to join in these forums and kind of practice for these tests with the people who are already a part of this. And these tests usually function on peer learning because you identify mistakes as a group, just like how you did for JEE or GATE. So it will help. And we'll also be organizing a few sessions over here from people who have already taken this exam from our institute as to how they cracked it and how to go about this. And we can also facilitate a couple of complementary sessions from coaching institutes which would like to, have a trial run. So in case if it's useful for students, the students can then opt on to a program where these institutes kind of help students prepare for this. Then we'll move on to the career awareness type. So I conducted two specific surveys for the MTech and the MSc freshers. And what was kind of noticed is that they were not really sure of what kind of career opportunities IIT Madras offers to these students. And similarly, quite a lot of UG freshmen also uh, had a similar query. So I thought, why not conduct a career awareness drive, which is tailored for the freshmen of our institute, telling them what kind of various diverse career opportunities are available uh, from the campus. So this will be organized in the even semester, ideally around the second semester for all the freshmen, so that they kind of know what is going on in the institute. So that is one. Then we want to domain focused weekenders. So this will be a weekend like convention where you collaborate with industry leaders and you'll conduct seminars, demonstrations. You might have panel discussions, workshops. So the idea here is to bridge the gap between academics and industry. Let's say a lot of people perform, a lot of people, attend ML workshops and they also do ML courses. But this is recruiters from the institute who are conducting workshops. So people will be able to relate as to what kind of work is going on in that company and and to kind of see the work, I mean the courses that they're doing, relate to that, and how they can upskill themselves to reach that level. So yeah, this will be helpful in that aspect. Now we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah, now coming finally to interns and placements. So this year I plan on starting what is called an intern assistance program. So this will comprise of
Siddhartha, you have half a minute more.
okay, so this will comprise of mentorship, mock GDs, and test series to help students to understand about what kind of companies and how to prepare for companies that come in the internship program. Then digital infrastructure upgrade is basically getting new portals for the institute internship and placements process, which it's an initiative that is already going on, but the final lap is yet to be done, and there are some additional hiccups. So my idea is to make sure that those hiccups are kind of removed and this thing goes through as soon as possible because it's a necessity. Now, last slide. Uh, okay. Then the next thing is to make the internship drive a two-stage one. That is to divide the day one into two slots. And finally, the idea is to have a centralized placement policy document which is exhaustive for the companies and the students so that there is clarity and transparency in the process. It's basically to enhance the clarity and transparency in the process. Yes. So
Hey,
that's about it.
finish up in maybe like 10 seconds.
Okay. So yeah, no, I'm done. That's it. Kind of. that's about it. You just have the last slide and we're done with the presentation. Yeah. So this is my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Siddhartha. Now we can move on to the executive council question.
Okay.
Aman, if you have any questions.
Yeah, sure. Am I audible?
Right, you are.
Okay, fine. Fine. I just have a few questions. Let's start with this one. So this is a manifesto point that you mentioned
Okay.
that skills for personal and professional development. Will this be introduced as a compulsory course or is an elective in the curriculum?
This will most likely be a compulsory 0 credit pass or fail course, just like how the life skill course functions right now.
Okay. Then I think it is also just like a proposal. I mean, not kind of promise, right?
It is a proposal, but the feasibility has been done to such an extent that it is the odds of it happening are pretty high. I managed to talk to all the stakeholders and get them to agree on this. Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us like who will you talk to regarding this?
Okay. So firstly, I kind of spoke to Mr. Shivakumar sir. He was the one who piloted the life skills course for the undergraduate students. I asked him how he went about the process. He gave me good detail as to how he went about it. So first thing is that uh, such a thing will have to first come from one of the deans, ideally the dean of students. So he will have to kind of propose that such a course is necessary. So, and the next step would be that someone will have to take initiative on A, forming the course, B, teaching the course. So, once that is done, once the course is formulated to some structure, then all the department HODs will get a proposal, a formal proposal. They will go through it. You need a majority of them to accept for this to become a compulsory course in their curriculum. And once that is done, the things will proceed. So I'll tell you till what level I have done. So I've spoken to the dean of students regarding why there is a need. He feels that yes, there is a need, and he says and he's willing to start this proposal. I also gave them feedback from the companies, so he understands how important this issue is. And the next thing is that I spoke to Mr. Shivakumar sir and the dean of ACATS. So Shivakumar sir is will be taking initiative if all the others are okay with it, especially the dean of students and dean ACATS, which they are. He will take the initiative to form the portions or rather the framework for this course. So what since he has said okay, I also went to the dean ACATS. So he said that yes, he'll also be willing to propose this along with the dean of students whenever they have a meeting with all the HODs. So once that is done, you need someone to volunteer to teach. So that is something you need will happen once the proposal is made. Someone has to volunteer. So once the volunteering part is done, this will be made, and yeah, that's how it will go forward. So this is the limit to which the feasibility has been done till now. From here on, it will have to happen once. If I get elected, from there on, it will happen.
Okay. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question is like, what is the role of academic affairs secretary in BSc and CNET?
Okay, so in the BSc, I believe that the academic affairs secretary is responsible for representing the views of the student in that committee per se, because it is a committee which is entirely made up of faculty, apart from I think the academic affairs secretary, and I'm not really sure if the research affairs secretary is also a part of it, but I think yes. And yeah, so it is required for them to uh, uh, yeah, represent the views of the student. And right now, in this situation, you also have a lot of queries from the student side saying that, hey, uh, there are some difficulties in the evaluation and a lot of that. So I think when in these emergency situations, he would be the de facto person who will kind of represent their views there. So that is one of the most important duties there.
Okay, fine. My next question is like you would be aware of the grading pattern that IIT Madras follows. So it
Uh-huh.
is S A B C D E. and
Yeah.
after that fail. But like you see, between any two consecutive grades, there's a one grade point difference. But between two grade points D and D, there's a grade point difference of 2 points.
Two. Yeah.
So, what is your comment on that? Like, should it be there, or it should be like similar, like other grade points, only one difference? Or do you
Mm.
think it is okay and it needs to be there?
See, firstly, from see, I think right now they have a particular set system as to how they grade on the Gaussian curve. So if you take E grade as 40%, they have rules laid out for that. So if you were to change that, you have to change those rules. So that is one. So once if the institute is okay with changing both the rules from, let's say, to E to something else, yes you can. But it again depends on how they're changing, right? Let's say right now you have an E and a D, and since E is 4, let's say the institute is more, let's say the professor is more likely to give the student in middle a D than an E. So it is very subjective, right, to the person. So I don't think I am the right person to comment on this. But if it were up to me, yeah, I would obviously like something in the middle, so that in case you go below a D, you don't want to end up at E. So yeah.
Okay, fine. My next question would be, assuming we have a capacity to
Hmm.
hold at max 1.5K students on campus from
Okay.
July 2020 to July 2021 to
Hmm.
December 2021,
Okay.
then what would be your priority to call back the students only in
Uh-huh.
the UGs?
Among the UGC, the first thing would be the batch that would probably have to finish their labs, so that the ones in the I mean, once this Jan to May 2020 semester, 2021 semester is over, uh, the students will graduate. So your pre-final years will go to the final year. So you'd want them because they'd want A, B sitting for placements. And the next thing would be that if it is possible to have, once that is done, if you could have more people, I would definitely call the third year students, or the pre-final year students, yes, because they'll also have internships, and it's better to have a campus infrastructure to attend these processes, because not everyone has an internet connectivity, a proper 24/7 electricity supply, and all those. There are a lot of variables when you are at home. So when you go back to the institute, you kind of give a level playing field for everyone. So yeah, this would be my priority to call back. But uh, but one thing that is very important is that you don't want one particular batch to be spending a lot of time at home. You would want some kind of rotation to go on. So that should also be kept in mind. Let's say the freshers batch that is that kind join the institute. You want them to have, at least that'll be the first time they see the institute. You at least want them to spend a couple of months in the institute. Otherwise, even in their school, they kind of when they were in their class 12, they spent a significant amount of time at home. So you don't want these people to spend more than 1.5 years at home. So you'd probably want to cycle it out. Once each and every process is over, let's say you can send one particular batch home and then call the next batch, something like that. If it were up to me, that is what I'd do.
Okay, so you will prioritize the placement and internship students first, and then we'll go back to the junior ones.
Yeah, probably the next semester we'll call back the junior students. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Uh, can data science minor be included in the current set of minors list?
Um, See, if you look at the current set of minor lists, they've made it kind of very clear that if there is a IEEE, you don't have a corresponding minor. Similarly, if there is a specialization, you don't have a corresponding minor, because there has to be some amount of differentiation, right? Let's say there is an artificial machine learning kind of minor, so that is not open to computer science and data science students. So if the institute is very clear about that, so I don't think there is any provision for having a minor for data science.
Okay, fair enough. Fine. My next question would be, uh, if you were to, okay, again, it's completely hypothetical case. If you
Uh-huh.
were to propose a new minor, let's say
Mm-hmm.
product design, then what would be the process you will have to follow to to make this minor official and applicable to the students.
Okay, cool. So it is a minor. I'm guessing first I need to have a set number of courses that can be offered in this criteria, because for a minor right now you need to do 4 courses. So assuming I'm assuming you'll need to have at least 5 or 6 courses so that it satisfies the odd even semester criteria and different slots in case you have a slot class or something. So ideally I would wait for 6 courses to be eligible to kind of give you that minor. So yeah, so firstly you'll have to look at 6 courses, then you'll have to look at you'll have to bucket them. I think you're supposed to take it to the dean of acads, telling that, hey, can we bring, club these 6 courses and give this minor to a particular, for students doing 4 out of these 6 courses, let's say. So what you'll do is he will say, okay, he will take it to, he'll ask me, let's say he takes it or I take it, depending on whatever the levels of, conviction he has on this. So it will go to the BSc. Once it goes to the BSc, irrespective of what happens there, it goes to the Senate. So final call will be taken by the Senate, right? If the Senate feels it is appropriate, they will approve it. If not, they wouldn't approve it.
Okay, fine. Okay, so I have a few questions regarding placement. First one being, how do you think the slotting of firms in phase 1 of placement takes into account the student preference?
Okay, sure. I'll tell you how it is done. So the student preferences are basically 2 types. Okay, one is students who have had experience in the companies. Let's say someone has been recruited by that company, and they will report their experience of about 1.5 years in that company, how it has been, how they like the role, or how what they feel about the role. So that is one kind of feedback we get. The second kind of preference that I think you are hinting at is exactly the shortlisted students for the interview. So yes, there is a good proportion. Let's say this is not the only factor. There are 7 or 8 other factors, but let's say if you were to divide 100 by 8, you would get 12.5, right? So we kind of give more or less the 12.5 weightage to this factor as well.
Fine. I mean, a small context to this, like many students, I mean, at least in my circle, were thinking that there were many companies on day 3, which could be on day 2. There could be many on day 2, which could be on day 1. So, I mean, what would you say to them?
Okay, I'll tell you one thing. So this year, in day 1, in each slot we had about 40 profiles. Okay, about 40 was the number. And then as we moved towards day 2, we had 40 companies, not profiles, 40 companies, and we felt it was already too much. So these 40 companies were in some way or the other better than the companies which came in day 3. So if we were to add more companies from day 3 to day 2, which we already felt was very high, you are contributing to the overlaps. So yes, if there is one particular company which over the years students say that, we feel that this this requires to be in a higher slot, you would definitely take that into consideration. But I feel this year, based on the numbers, this is the maximum number of companies with respect to numbers that you can have in day 2. So any more in day 2 would just add to the overlaps, in my opinion, because I believe every overlap that is made is basically an offer lost, right? I think you will understand since you sat through the process. So the idea here is to minimize that and spread it evenly so that we get the maximum number of students placed. Offers is not the idea here. The number of students placed is the main criteria.
Yeah. I mean, I agree to this fact that we should completely avoid any kind of overlap. That is, suppose, just to add to this context, suppose there are 7, 8 students from different branches who are messaging you that Siddharth, we believe this company A, which is currently slotted in 2.2, should be swapped with another company B slotted in 3.1. And there are 7, 8 students who are close to you, and even they have different branches and they have affinity for the same profile. Then for I mean, any kind of doubt comes to your mind that, okay, if so many students are saying, shouldn't this have been done?
See, wait, I'll tell you what is will happen in that case. Even them being close to me or not is irrespective. Okay, be it anyone, I would follow this procedure. So I'll make that clear. So first, what I would do is if these many students are kind of pinging me or even their respective department placement course, the first step of action would be to first look at the entire interview shortlist of that company, the company in 3.1 that you told me. We'll send out a Google form asking, do you guys actually want this company to move to 2.2? If a and particularly, you don't necessarily have to push that 2.2 company down to 3.1. So you could add this one company. That is fine if all the people in the shortlist feel so. So we will float out a Google form to these people. So if all these people kind of say, yes, we would really like this company to move to 2.2, or not just all, let's say a big fraction of the people says, let's take a number like 60, 65. So yeah, it could be done. If that many people have the same opinion, yes.
Okay, fine. My second question would be, I think you would be very much aware about this thing. When
Okay.
even in the offline exams, there could be kind of cheating being heard of, but it was
Yeah.
not quite that much rampant. But in the
Uh-huh.
online exams, you would have come to know about all kind of platforms where students of different, I mean, not only of single IIT,
Mm-hmm.
students of different IIT could share what the company had asked in their campus. And even during the exam time, they would share the answer, and it is like in simple words, cheating, very rampant. And I believe this percentage of people cheating has increased in the online scenario. I
Okay.
might be wrong. I don't have data to back that. But fine. Do you have any plan to stop this, or you believe it is the company's responsibility to take care of this?
Okay. See, firstly, over a period of time, companies are also deploying a lot more methods. Let's say the new testing platforms are very sophisticated. So if you kind of tilt your face by more than a particular angle, it will warn you. 3 warnings, and you get a message sent to the testing agency. Next thing is that a company looks for a set pattern of mistakes. Let's say if everyone is making the same kind of mistakes, a red flag. So it's most likely to do something or take some kind of an action. The next thing is that there have been cases in other IITs where companies have pulled out of the process because there has been rampant cheating. So it's a very good thing that nothing of that sort happened in our campus this year. And we also made it very clear to the students saying that if something like that happens and if something goes wrong, it is not just you who's affected, it's the entire people that is affected. Okay. So you might think of it as okay, fine, it's one company, but think about it. It's a chain of events, right? If one company doesn't come give offers, those people are not going to get it. So it'll move to the burden on the offers will move to some other company. So it's a chain reaction. So we kind of on at a department level, we had a few meetings with every students. We have a quad student mapping, right? So we kind of told every student that, hey, please don't do this. Rather focus your time and effort on preparation. So I think that had some amount of effect with this. But yes, beyond a point, I think as student coordinators, there is nothing much you could do because you don't have a online proctoring or a webcam based proctoring system, right? Because the company will be using that webcam for the service. So yeah, there's only so much you could do. We try to educate them about the moral hazard of it. So I think that is working. Till now, it's working. And okay, one thing, someone has said that my voice is very feeble. Is it better now? I'm keeping the mic as close to me as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine for me. I just increase the volume and
I think that the voice is fine.
It looks fine.
Okay, cool.
Uh,
Yeah, so we just, as I said, we just kind of indicate them about the moral hazard in that, and yeah, I think it is working fine till now.
okay, fine. Uh, do you think the process followed for walk-in in an online scenario, I mean, was it different from the process that we follow in offline scenario?
See, the walk-in process per se remain the same. Whenever a company wanted for walk-ins, instead of collecting resumes, we collected resumes via Google form. We had a set details they had to fill, and if a company wanted to look through the walk-in resumes, we would just share the responses. It is completely with the company, just like how it happens in an offline process. There's no student interaction over there. Like the card doesn't get to do anything there. So that remained the same. This year, what was different was we felt that the walk-in process, a company wanting to collect resumes and will reduce the amount of time in which they can interview students where potential offers could be made. So what we told the company was to kind of give us multiple interview shortlist and waitlist. So there'll be a list of people who wrote the test, right? So all the people, they were ranked based on their performance in the test or whatever other criteria the company was looking for. So first they'll give us an interview shortlist, then a waitlist. This year we asked them to get multiple waitlists, let's say 3, 4, 5, and companies as they went to day 4, day 5. Some of them even gave us 11 or 12 waitlists. So not 11 or 12 students, 11 or 12 sheets of waitlist. So that was something which we kind of improved upon this year, so that companies get more time to interview students. Yeah.
Okay. I just have another last question. The thing is, I mean, this is an issue more in general that we face not in just IIT placements. I believe this is in general applies to any placement happening anywhere across the world. The
Okay.
thing is, after some n rounds of interview, and n can be an integer number greater than equal to 1.
Okay.
I mean, 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds.
Yeah, I get
After
that.
some n rounds of interview, if some candidate is not called for the further process, then the candidate is actually in the state of dilemma whether, I mean, where did he go wrong? What did he
Okay.
lack? So that he could improve in the later part, I mean, later interviews. So, do you think there is a need of feedback system? And if there is a need of feedback system, then I mean, do you plan to do anything regarding that so that the companies who took the interviews can give some kind of feedback to the students who they couldn't select?
Okay. So firstly, if I think that the feedback will be helpful, yes, it will definitely be helpful for students. But these are the two concerns that come to my mind with respect to the feedback in general. Okay. So one is that uh, if a company is going to give feedback to students who haven't finished the process, it is going to take some amount of time within the process itself, because every company right now in the first 4 days at least gets 7 hours to interview students. So within 7 hours, it has to finish the entire shortlist, and if it doesn't, it moves on to the wait list. So if they're going to be using time in this 7 hours, it is kind of going to reduce the number of offers they're going to make, because they're going to get less time to interview. So that will be one potential factor that could limit this feedback process. Next, but do I think that there is a need for this feedback system, or will it be good for the student? Yes, it will definitely be. And we already collect feedback from the company, from the pool of students, from the company, and it will usually involve a few questions about the students they've interviewed as well. But yes, it won't be very individual. It will be for the entire student once they've interviewed in general. But in an offline scenario, what happens is usually the HR tends to be free at sometimes, and the candidate has a chance to go and ask to the HR, I would like to get some feedback, and they do get some feedback. So in the online system, yeah, that was not possible because you had meet links and everything. It was very restrictive in nature. But yes, I think when we do go back to the offline mode, the kind of informal system of getting feedback will still go on. So I think that takes care of it. If you would want to add more to the existing feedback list, would it be helpful for the student? I don't think so, because still you will get general feedback, right, for the entire month. So yeah.
Okay, fine. I am done with my question. I'll just jump in case I have more. Other people
Okay.
can ask.
Yeah, I am here. Aman, can I take it over from here?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure,
Rohit.
certainly.
Rohit, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Siddharth. Rohit here.
Hi.
I was going through your manifesto. I have not gone very detailed in your feasibility report. I have just glanced through it. So, clarify a couple of things if it is there in your feasibility report.
Okay.
One thing I was wanting to check it out, this BTech plus MS degree,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Additional option given to BTech and wishing to opt out of dual degree to the existing BTech and MTech degree, right? Why exactly are you doing this? What is the benefit of this?
Okay, so right now you have a set number of students who are interested in going for a PhD program post their BTech. Okay, so when you are moving from a BTech to a PhD, it's natural for these admission boards to expect a significant amount of research in your profile. So then what happens is many students have the tendency to convert to a VTech plus an MTech program because the dual degree project is a good amount of research and you get one extra year to do your research activities
Just
in your academic life. Yes.
just a minute.
Yeah.
Do you know there is something called as direct PhD on our campus?
Yeah, there is a thing called direct PhD in our campus, but if you
So
want to do a PhD program outside the institute,
okay.
why would you
Okay,
want
and
to
how
outside?
do you know by doing this MS degree program they will be eligible to do it outside?
No,
Because the
I'm not
structure
saying
never. Go ahead.
I'm not saying they're going to be eligible. I'm saying it improves their chances significantly.
But why do you
So
want to have a combined? Why do you want to have a combined one? What is the benefit? Like you are saying, if the MS degree program doesn't work out, then you will get out with an MTech degree program. Is it?
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Okay. There is
yeah.
no equivalence between MTech and MS on our campus. So you can't say that so many credits of MTech is equivalent to so many credits of MS,
Yeah.
which is
I'm
exactly
not
what.
doing that. No, no.
Okay,
I'll
then
tell you what.
how can you
Okay,
change the
I'll tell you how this is going to function from top to bottom. So I think you will get a better picture. So what happens currently is that a student, if he wants to pursue a master's program and a BTech program together in 5 years, he converts to a department dual degree on IEEE. So this MS comes into picture only if he's doing the department dual degree. IEEE doesn't have a department. There is no existing MS program in interdisciplinary dual degree masters.
Right.
So that is out of the picture. So you go to a department dual degree, you have a department MTech and an MS for every department. So what happens is, if a student wants to pursue an MS, let's say he expresses interest, he'll have to produce a significantly higher quality DTP, which will result in a publication or of sorts, not necessarily one, but this criteria will specifically be determined by a committee that is being set by the Dean ACATS and the Dean Research. That is Jagdish Kumar, Professor Jagdish Kumar and Professor Mishra will set together a committee. They will decide what is the criteria for this. So once the dual degree DDP kind of satisfies all this criteria, he will be given an MS degree. Okay, so why I said there should always be an option for the student to get an MTech is, let's say he wants to sit for the placements. I believe that right now, there is a choice. Okay, it still depends. If the students want to take that MTech and sit for placement, let's say he decides not to go for higher studies, the MTech option will always help him. The next thing is that, let's say he's not able to get a DDP of set quality within that 5th year, he should be able to take that MTech and still move ahead in life, right? So that is why that exit option is there. So this is how the program will roughly function.
But did you
So,
talk to Ashok Mishra sir about this thing?
no, I didn't talk to Mr. Sir, but the Dean ACAT spoke with Mr. Sir and got back to me on this. So he told me he'll take that initiative. So
Okay, but see, your MS degree is not a 2 years course. Your MS degree is only defined as a 2 years course. So now, how can you tell that somebody might take 3 years, somebody might take 4 years? Then at the end of that also, you will give him an MTech program equivalent to somebody who has done it in 6 years.
No, see, this
5
is
years.
where this is a conversation I had with the Dean ACAT as well. He said there are 2 ways to go about it. One, you tell every student that you only have 1.5 years per se to give me a DDP which is worthy of an MS degree, or that is one way to go about it. And if you don't, at the end of the 5th year, he'll give you an MTech. That is one way to go about it. The second way to go about it, if the candidate is so sure he wants an MS, he takes an extension post the 5th year to get his DDP to the standards of an MS thesis, and then defend the thesis and get an MS degree. So there are 2 ways of going about it. So again, he asked me what was my opinion. I said I would rather leave it to the student to be able to choose what he wants. But he said, okay, let us think about it. So that is where the conversation ended.
No, but see, that is okay. But your project and MTech is essentially under one professor or something, right? So your professor decides what grades you get in the project, in the MTech part of it.
No, you have guides and co-guides. I think you can have up to 2 co-guides in a project.
Co-guides, yeah, fine, whatever, co-guide. In MS, you have something called a GTC. that is a panel of 3-4 members, and that
Okay.
members decide whether that research is worthy of publication or not, and that includes people who are not who are the professors outside the domain of the person, the speaker,
Yeah,
right? So there is a lot of academic issues and a lot of the structural issue that comes in when you talk about MS. Okay, and an
Yeah.
MS degree equivalent is not there in MTech. So if you bring something like this, whether you pursue MS, but if it doesn't work out, then you take an MTech. Essentially, you're equating something with other, right? Like so many degrees or so many hours spent in MS might be good enough to give you an MTech degree. Do you not think that there might be certain issues where an equivalence issue is coming in here? How are you defining downgrading to an MTech from an MS?
I'm not saying you're downgrading. See, there is no concept of downgrading here.
Okay.
That's why I said conversion. See, you can talk about like this, right? Let's say someone is taking a BTech plus an MTech,
Okay.
BTech plus an MTech program. Let's say he doesn't want it. He comes back to BTech. Do you say he's downgrading to a BTech? You don't say that, right? I mean, you just say he's converting back or something. So why
No,
would you
you're
think that as
doing.
downgraded?
See, no. See, the question here is that the MTech is a course-based thing. Your MS is a research-based thing. If you're equating a course-based thing to a research-based thing, that's an entirely different option than a dual degree and a BTech, which are both course-based.
Yeah.
Both BTech and dual degree are credit systems, whereas the MS system is not a credit system.
True.
So how are you equating effort put into MS to a credit equivalent in MTech?
That is something that the committee will decide, right? They will
Exactly.
say how they're going to establish equivalence.
Exactly. So that is what my question was. Have you talked to Dean Researcher about this thing? Because he was pretty adamant that you cannot equate it to an MTech degree.
You cannot equate it to an... See, here the idea here is to not to equate it to an MTech degree. Here the idea here is to find what more do you need to do so that you get that degree. I'm not going to do any equations. This guy wants an MS degree. So what does he have to do to obtain it? That is the question. So if he does that, he'll get it. If he doesn't do that, he'll walk away with an MTech. Provided, I mean,
so
see,
then
the
an
course...
MTech and a BTech and an MS guy can sit for all the placement opportunities for a BTech and MS?
No, see, that is a question that will have to be dealt with once this thing comes into place and how companies react to it, because you will have to see what companies consider, how their HR policies go, right?
That question is central because currently when you have an MS and PhD degree offered, you still get to sit for only PhD. But the amount of opportunities an MS guy has and the BTech guy has is way different. So are you going to give them opportunities in placement with this degree from IIT Madras to sit for every company which is open for BTech, dual degree, MTech and MS?
No, that is not something we decide. No, that is something that the company decides. How is it
Yes. So if you are putting in the policy, you will be allowing the companies to sit or not, right? You will be allowing the students to apply for a company or not, right?
Yeah,
So if the
it's
company
not me. See, the company will register on the portal. They will decide what all degrees to open to. This will also be one of the degrees that they can open to. Yeah.
No. It's fine with them. Okay. Let's say the company is opening for PhD. Okay. Like I will give you a client example. Okay.
Cool.
A guy is doing MS and PhD, a combined degree. Okay. He says I have finished the criteria for MS and I am going to finish the criteria for PhD.
Okay.
He's going to get 2 certificates at the end of the thing.
Okay.
2 degrees, right? So why is he not allowed to go for an MS degree? The same way, if you have a BTech and an MS program, okay, that guy is currently at the MS level when he applies.
Okay.
Right. Are you going to allow him to sit for a BTech company which is open only for BTech and not for MS?
See, no. Wait, we'll have to. You don't draw parallels to MS and PhD. Try drawing parallels to the existing dual degree program. Here you have companies which are open only to BTech.
That's what I'm telling you. See, dual degree is also fine. Okay, dual degree is fine.
This person has done a BTech in IIT, right? So you draw parallel with that. Why do you equate it to that side? Because the people who you are equating to have not done a BTech from IIT Madras. Need not have necessarily done a BTech from IIT.
No. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you MS and PhD. Okay.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying.
No. Wait, just listen to my question. MS plus PhD. Okay, that guy is in the 3rd or 4th year of a combined program called MS plus PhD. Okay. So essentially, currently he's doing research. Okay, at the PhD level. Okay, the company is open for MS. He's still not eligible to sit for that.
Okay, wait. I'll tell you one thing. See, if that company is open for an MS, do you right now in the portal, do you or do you not have an option called MS plus PhD degree from IIT Madras if a company wants to open to that or not?
You tell me that thing. Have you checked it
You are
out?
the, see, I don't know, okay, because as far as I know, there is no such option. There's only MS and PhD. There is no MS plus PhD thing.
Got
It
it.
is not
Okay.
there.
All
Ah,
right.
so
Fine. So
if you think that is a separate thing, don't you think that is something that the research
no, but
scholars should
that's
have
the
come and
policy
fought
decision.
for?
No. See, that is the policy decision, right? I'm asking you
No,
at the
no, that
end.
is not a policy decision. No, if it is a separate degree, it should be there because there has to be someone telling the companies that, hey, we have also done MS, then we have proceeded to a PhD. Don't you think we deserve to sit for companies for MTech? Because unless you put it as a separate degree, like how BTech is separate and dual degree is separate, so you have BTech plus MTech, right? Similarly, if you had put that provision called MS plus PhD in the portal from IIT Madras, because here the catch is they have done both the MS and the PhD from IIT Madras. So if it is there in the portal, there will be sufficient outreach done to the company saying that, hey, this is different. Then they will take it into consideration. If it is not even there in the portal, how do we expect
No, no,
companies to
see,
know?
see, on the website, what it is there, BTech, MTech, MBA, MSc, MA, right?
Yeah, everything is there. Yeah.
How many programs do you have in IIT Madras, which is a combination of two things?
Right now, as far as I'm aware, you have the dual degree program, you have the IEEE program, then you have your MS PhD program, then you have a direct BTech plus PhD, but there are no takers for it right now.
Okay, so so the way you are talking, in
Hmm.
case I allow such people, I have to put a combination of degrees also on the portal.
Yeah, you have to go kind of put it in the source code so that companies know such a thing exists. We'll have to do separate
And the
outreach to them
company
saying,
will ask, and the company is going to ask you, why are there so many things? I want only BTech guys.
no, see,
Okay,
you
then
that's
they
that
will
is where
tell
you.
him, no, no, wait. They will tell, my requirement is BTech. Okay, if I tell you like that, will you open it for all the people who are eligible, who have
No,
a combined
no,
degree with a BTech plus something?
no. You have to do exactly what the company says because that is what is that will be dealing in bad faith. You can't do that. You do exactly what the company says. You're allowed to pitch. See, that is what we do right now, right?
Okay, so
So
then you will have to tell companies that a BTech and MS degree exists on the campus, right? And then
exactly.
you specifically pick up people for that degree.
Yeah. No, you don't have to specifically pick people. See, right now we do that because let's take the case of an IEEE setup. No, so we had an IEEE code this year because we felt the number of people in that degree were too high. But a couple of years back, it was just handled by the department placement course. So this guy would have done a BTech, right? He could still be handled by that BTech department placement course.
That doesn't answer the question. My question is something different. My question is, see, when you are making a policy document and your manifesto, you have written something like, what do you call that thing? A central placement policy document. Okay.
Yeah.
Something written there. Okay.
Okay.
There is a policy document existing right now that you are
Yeah,
aware
there
of.
is. Yeah, there is definitely.
Okay. So that's another question. What is your central policy document? But in that thing,
We'll
what
finish
is
this and we'll
there
go
is
to that.
there is a very gray area right now that you are touching upon, where it is nowhere mentioned that an MS and PhD guy cannot sit for an MS degree program companies, which is an internal placement team policy that we have made.
Okay, see, first thing, firstly, I'll tell you one thing. I'll draw parallels to how it will be treated in the placement process if this were to go forward,
Yeah,
and
please,
then I'll tell you, then I'll come to the MSPhD thing, how we
Right.
can sort it out. Okay, so firstly, how this will kind of show up in the portal if it were to go through is, it will also be classified as integrated masters. Okay, but we'll clearly mention that it is you'll have one for BTech plus MTech, one for BTech plus MS. So we'll tell the companies clearly that this person has opted for this, decided to go for an BTech plus MS degree, but he has also done a BTech in IIT Madras. So this is an option that he wants to pursue. So this is why this program exists. So this will be exactly how, when dual degrees were first introduced by IIT Madras, by giving people the option to pursue an integrated program. So this is how it will be dealt with placements. So secondly, this is why I very clearly gave an option to the student that if he wants to sit for placement, he can always opt out of this MS program and sit for placements as a normal regular MTech guy in case he feels that it is too much of a risk. Okay, I'm also giving that guy that option. So I think these two very clearly covers how his placement is going to be dealt with. Regarding new policies, yes, we'll have to make policies very clearly saying that a company has to specifically open for this BTech plus MTech, BTech plus MS program for this guy to be able to sit. this is one. This is how that policy will have to be made. Okay. Now we'll come to this MS plus PhD problem. So there is MS, there is PhD. If there is a particular program called MS PhD where the student does MS and his PhD in IIT Madras, I very clearly believe that there should be a separate column, and you should kind of ask companies to open for it. That is how it should have functioned.
We'll talk to the RAs for that. We'll talk to the aspiring RAs about what we should do about this thing.
Yeah, I will. I had a conversation with him, so I'll have further conversations regarding this. So I believe that
is about this thing.
Yes. So here the very important thing is that the degrees done in IIT Madras are the ones that matter. So if you have done 2 degrees, you have to create a separate column, and that's how I believe it should go forward.
No. What was his opinion?
Rohit,
Yeah.
Rohit, I think we'll go to the audience question and then just come back to the executive
you asked for
Okay,
his opinion. Okay, cool.
Okay, just conclude with this. We'll just go,
Yeah,
go
we'll
to
conclude.
audience question after that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the thing is that I didn't talk to him regarding the specific issue. This is the first time I'm hearing that such a thing exists. So throughout my tenure as a core or a DPC, I've never heard of this, nor have I heard any research scholar coming and mentioning this to me. So this is the first time I'm hearing. So yes, I will take it up with him. I haven't heard anything about this. I had a general conversation regarding what are his views on placements and how he proceeds to go forward with it. Just a primer, nothing more. I'll take it up later. That is what I wanted to say.
Right, sure. Thanks. Yeah, Tom, I think Jaswin, you can go ahead.
Yeah, right. So we'll go to the audience questions. So
Okay.
so we had a few people who gave us questions. We'll follow this format. We'll have question plus the audience are allowed only one follow-up. Make sure that you stick to that. Okay, we'll call up people based on what was filled. So Sudarshan, you can ask your question now. I'll unmute you.
Hi, Siddharth. Am I audible?
Hi. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Siddharth. So I have one question to you. So you said you were a part of a member of standing committee on co-curricular affairs, right? As a part of your department listed tenure. So as academic, and you would obviously know the various opportunities like C5 and a lot of things in the co-curricular sphere, which helps foster tech enthused among students. So as academic affairs secretary, how do you plan to improve upon this? I mean, how do you plan to encourage students who are actually tech enthused and are doing projects in NC to actually pursue a career in core engineering?
Okay. So firstly, okay, there are 2 parts to this. One, as I said, creating one, there will be a set of people who are already doing this. Then 2, there will be a set of people who don't know such a thing exists. So if I'll first take the first part, where there are a set of people who actually know this thing exists and how they can proceed further. So you'll definitely have these people will definitely kind of have seniors in their own C5 teams and how they did about it. They'll have an interaction with them on a daily basis. Yes. Second thing is that in my manifesto, I've mentioned something called as the academic mentorship cell. So there, I'm pretty confident that there'll be a set amount of mentors who have had similar interests or at least interest in the core field. So they will be talking about their experiences and how they plan on doing, let's say you'll have mentors from 3rd years, 4th years, and if they're dual degree, there'll be 5th years as well. So each person will be able to add perspective on how they kind of develop their interest and work towards that interest in that year, let's say 3rd, 4th, and 5th year. So this experience and this kind of mentorship will help the student as to how to proceed. And coming to the set of students who are not really sure that such a thing exists, I think C5 does a pretty good amount of outreach on how they could cover the freshers population by using the S-mail, the Instagram, and other social things, whatnot. And I think even for a freshman, there is also the Sati initiative where the mentors are more likely to talk about what is going on in the institute in general, and the academic mentorship cell will also, these sessions will be open to all. So a fresher will also be able to kind of listen to this and gain some knowledge on this. So I think this is how it'll go about. I mean, I'll go about this in general. Yeah.
Okay, so I just have a small follow-up. So you said you have 11 academic mentorship cell and third
Yeah.
year, fourth year senior students will mentor the undergrads, right?
Mm.
So for this particular issue, so basically what happens is a lot of students actually join CFA projects, go for inter-IT, DECMIT, etc. But finally, when they come to the stage of sitting for placements in their fourth or fifth year, they tend to go to consult or coding or basically non-core engineering roles. So if these set of people are going to mentor their juniors, do you think you will be able to get a cultural change where students actually pursue core engineering jobs?
Yes, that is a point of concern. The thing is that is why I mentioned in the feasibility report of the academic mentorship cell that the diversity of the mentors is important. Next thing is that there'll also be a faculty advisor, and in the case that there is a good chance that the faculty advisor will also want to interact with these students, and he'll also act as a bridge between the faculty of the department and the students. So if faculty were to get involved in this process, they would definitely have their views on what kind of work is going on in the department and kind of relate the core engineering aspects of the department to the students. So yes, diversity is important. We need to make sure that we don't put one particular type of people in the mentorship cell that is there. But yes, you do what you can do based on the supply and demand you get for the program, right? So within that constraints, we'll try our level best to maintain the diversity, and the faculty angle will also kind of help bring the core aspect to the setup.
Yeah. Thanks, Siddharth. All the best for attending.
Thank you.
We have received a question from an anonymous person. So the question is, so you know that IIT Madras has an online BSc degree on data science, right? So say a few years down the line, a few of the students from that course want to sit for placements along with the other UGs. So would that be possible, or what would be your opinion on that?
Okay, see, yes, when I had a call with the Dean of Academics, I also asked him a very similar question, like, what is the plan for IIT Madras on this online degree? How do they plan on taking it up? So, yes, I've kind of very clearly mentioned that it would be impossible to scale it to that level, because I think the intake is more than about 10,000 for the BSc online degree. So it will be impossible to scale our process. And I think they also have a clause. I'm not very sure about this. He told me that there is a clause that exists that says that there are certain activities in campus that these people won't be able to take part in. And I think placements and internships is one of those, which is mentioned in the brochure of the thing. I mean, I didn't go through the brochure particularly to verify it, but since I thought it was coming from the dean, it had to be true, right? So, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So we have a question.
Sorry for you, but I just have one follow-up for that. I mean, what if you are asked tomorrow? I mean, suppose it's a gray area and administration wants to have your view that whether online BSc students, if some top 10% of their batch can be allowed to participate in placements, then what would be your opinion on the same?
See, my opinion would be very clear that for on-campus placements should be only for the students who are pursuing a degree which is on campus. That is why it is called campus placements 1A. It's called campus placement, so it should be on campus. That is what is my view. And the next thing is that it would be really impossible. Even if you were to take 10%, okay, it's 1,000 people. So the existing number of people who sit for placements in 1 year right now itself is only in the ballpark of 1,100 to 1,200. It varies, but that is the number. So you want to double. So it is going to significantly affect your main program. So the main program right here is students on campus. So I will tell them how it doesn't make sense to kind of benefit one party at a significant expense of the other. So yes, my stance would be completely against it.
Right.
Right. So do we have Archish here? Here, if you could unmute him, if he's present. Mihir, if you could unmute Archish. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I did. I just.
Good evening. So I wanted to ask a question about the various online tests that is happening. So
Okay.
to my knowledge, what happens is the course coordinator has entire freedom on how they want to conduct tests. Usually, what happens
Okay.
there is a lot of confusion regarding the tests. So I am freshie right now. So we had our max in some like around last week.
Okay.
So the thing was the duration of the exam got extended during the test itself, and most of
Okay.
us were unaware of that extension. So
Okay.
is there any solution to have a unified testing facility in IIT Madras? Because most of the instructions are also not conveyed to us in proper time, as well as I mean, there is a lot of confusion in the student community, basically.
Okay, so yes, I'll address this in three parts. Okay, one is the testing guidelines, the kind of freedom that is given to the prof. Third thing is the lack of a timetable. So first thing, regarding the guidelines, yes, the dean has some basic guidelines. Okay, as to how someone conducts a NSEM and a class test in general, and how the weightage has to be distributed. So the NSEM needs to have, I think, a minimum of 50% weightage in courses, or if you're going to have two quizzes, I think the weightage can go as low as 40. So he told me there are some set guidelines that a prof has to definitely follow. So yes, regarding the grading pattern, there is something, and regarding where he does the quiz and the NSEM, there are a few guidelines, but the framework of the guidelines is such that it leaves a big box open to the professors. Like they can conduct it as a take-home exam, as a proctored exam. Yes, there are many ways, and the platform is also undefined. Yes, as you said. Okay, now coming to what can be done in this situation. Yes, if you are able to gather a significant number of people, one second, sorry, yeah, if you are able to gather a set number of students who have, kind of been affected by this, or what exactly is your query here, and what kind of solution are you looking for, and let's say first reach out to your course coordinator and your through your CR, and let's say it's the math one course, right? So it's probably taken by the entire institute at once. So probably get all the department CRs to kind of see what is, if this problem is universal. If it is universal, try to kind of get them to collect data on what it is and go to the course, go to your respective course faculty, let them know, and I'm pretty sure they'll be able to come to a conclusion as to what to do for this. And in the extreme case that you have no action that is being taken, you can always feel free to write an email to Dean AC. He will reply within 24 hours. So that is how it is done. And coming to the third issue of the timetable, yes, I have taken that up myself to the dean, saying that it is very necessary to have a quiz timetable, because you don't even know when is going to be the next quiz and you can't plan anything. So yes, he said that he will look into the possibility of creating a timetable at least for quiz 2 and the midterms that are to come. So yes, that is something I will take it up to the dean if I get elected. Yes, there is a need for a timetable, definitely. So I think I've answered your question.
Yes, I have no follow-ups. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we have another question from Sudarshan. I
Okay.
think that is the last of the audience questions.
Okay.
Hi, Siddharth. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah. So I have a small question. So you are aware of the MSc program, right? MSc, which is 7
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yep.
So traditionally, the placement statistics for MSc program is low. What do you think are the reasons for low placement percentage in these programs, and how do you plan to improve it?
Okay, good. So first thing is that why do I think the placement percentage is low? So firstly, I think it is because the awareness, as I said, no, many of these students are not aware of what are the opportunities that are available to them. So if they were aware of it at, let's say, even 2 to 3 months earlier than what they are aware right now, they'll be able to prepare for it better, keeping themselves better equipped. So that is one. Next thing is that we look at the nature of this program. What are these MSc programs? It's physics, chemistry, and maths. So these are traditionally very sciencey subjects. So I am sure in these three subjects traditionally, if you were to look at anywhere around our country, the numbers are slightly, or in fact, depending on case to case as to what you compare with, they are lower than a traditional engineering degree. So we already have a bias in the system that is embedded. So we have to counter that bias. So these are the two reasons why I think the numbers are low. What can be done to make it better is that, firstly, uh, I kind of realized that every, just like how you can generalize batches in undergraduate or MTech, I don't think you can generalize batches in MSc as to what their specific interest is. So first thing would be to kind of have a basic survey among themselves every year as to what kind of roles they are looking for. Let's say you could ideally do it in their second semester in the institute. So you'll get a rough ballpark of what they're looking at. And you could have a few companies, I mean, you look at the past data of placement, seeing which all companies are open to MSc. So you'll have that data as well. So does this data fit in that you could see? That is something we could look at. And if it doesn't, we'll have to find avenues to kind of get the companies in which these students want, let's say, their first or second preferences, and do some amount of outreach there. That is where the MSc placement core, and to that extent even the entire placement team in general, because they're also non-core offers, so come into picture, and that is how you can do about it. And now, one thing that I think which we can capitalize upon right now is, you have this online learning platforms which are currently at a really good time because of the new normal that we're all accustomed to. So there is a lot of openings for MSc students. So if their interests happen to lie in that sector, we would be able to improve the numbers significantly. Or if there is some other sector, we'll have to do the groundwork and how to bring about these companies. So that would be something that we could do to improve the numbers.
Yeah. A follow-up again on
Okay.
MSc career
Okay.
opportunities. A lot
Uh-huh.
of students, MSc students, go for PhD also after graduating with MSc from campus, mostly because they do not have enough companies recruiting them from campus. And there has been a general concern among MSc students, which has also been discussed in SLC in the past, that the academic affairs secretary does not pay enough attention to their needs and
Okay.
their career or activities for career growth or placements, etc.
Okay.
So, what do you plan to do about this?
Okay. Firstly,
What do you plan to what do you plan to do to make sure the concern is mitigated? And yeah,
okay. So firstly, what I have done till now, I'll tell you the manifesto itself. So I have made sure that there are at least two things which will improve them, which will affect them directly and improve their cause. One is the career awareness type. Next is, I believe, the skills for personal and interpersonal development. That is going to affect them and benefit them rather directly. That is one. And coming to how I could cater to them, okay, here there is one thing to be kept in mind, that uh, uh, it might be difficult for a BTech or a undergraduate student to be directly be able to relate to their problems, because the nature of the degree is one, and the tenure in the institute is 2 years. This is 4 or 5 years, so that is there. So what I could do is, me expecting to relate directly is kind of, I feel, which is not possible. What I could do is create a very open communication channel, so that they'll be able to reach to me at any point in time to tell out what type of concerns they have. So one very good channel is, they will have their department legislators as well. That is one channel. Second channel is also through the placement core. Then thirdly, they could obviously contact me over WhatsApp, I mean through the Gmail or anything. So that way I would make sure that I do respond to their queries. And if at all, if it is something of very significant concern, we could definitely even form an executive committee consisting of members from the MSc team, to kind of resolve their issues. If there is any, that can also be done.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your answer. I mean, most of this is not a follow-up. So most of these channels have existed in the past. I hope you make proper use of them and solve these problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We as ACZ have a question.
Okay.
So in the past few years, the number of students competing for the position of AAS has been binary. There has been one candidate, there has been zero candidate. But why do we not have more candidates?
See, I'm not really sure about the instances from the past, but I could tell you what could be the potential reasons as to why not many people are contesting for this position. Because as you know, the amount of work and the burden that comes with this is significantly high, and the amount of impact. See, impact is basically could be positive or negative, because if your actions are going to have a large bearing on the placements and the internships, it is a position that needs to be taken with. I mean, you will have to be ready for it, and people have to prepare for it. I mean, they need to be prepared for it rather. So that could be one reason, and the next reason could be that traditionally, uh, I mean, I've noticed that I think I am the first person to stand for this position in my third year in a very long time. It's usually been fourth years. So as you notice that your interest in particular activities over a period of time comes down. So this will be my third year. It's if say I get elected, this will be my third year in the placement or the rather the academic affairs setup. So that is third year is something 3 years is something where it's easier to have your interest in one area. If you look at the pattern, even when students join in companies post graduation, they stay in a company usually for only 2 to 3 years. Fourth year is very rare. So I think that phenomenon is just continuing over here. So the amount of interested people is less. So from there, I think it ends up being 0 or 1.
So a follow-up onto that. So
Yeah.
what do you think? So should we have more people trying to, as in, should we have a competitive post or should we not? And if you are going with we need a competitive post, what can be done to increase the number of people applying?
No, what do you mean by competitive post? Do you mean another position itself that is going to compete, or another candidate
No.
contesting for the same post?
See, more than or equal to 2 candidates applying for the
Okay.
post and competing.
Yes, see, competition is always good because it brings out the best in each and everyone. Yes, but there are also two ways of looking at it. Let's say one is you have two good people applying. Yes, it will be a very fair and healthy competition, and it's good for everyone, for the better person to win. If you were to artificially add competition, let's say there is someone who's capable and willing contesting, you're just adding someone for the sake of it, I don't think that is going to work out. So you need to figure out how you're going to have interest. You're going to make sure that the interest stays, and how you're going to get two or more competent and interested people compete with each other. So that should be the idea, in my opinion. And how to do that, I think that the Insti is kind of solving that problem for you over the future, because it has stopped dual degree programs almost. So the number of BTech people are going to increase. So over a period of time, we'll have a lot more BTech secretaries. So if that is going to happen, so as I said, your interest is also kind of going to fall down drastically after the third year. So if you're going to become a secretary in your third year, you'll have more people interested. Obviously, you're in an IIT, you'll have a lot of capable people. So I think the institute is kind of solving the problem for us over the future.
All right. We have like 15 minutes. Maybe the executive council can go on for 10, 12 minutes, 12 more minutes, probably. Rohit, if you have any questions, if you have any more questions.
Yeah, I do. But in case some other secretary wants to take up something, they can ask. Bhanu, you have anything? Ranganathan, Bhanu, anybody?
My question is on similar lines of what you're asking regarding MS and MTech STEM. So you can go on with that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll continue.
Right. Yeah. So, sorry, I forgot your name. Siddharth. Yes. Siddharth. Yeah. Your manifesto has something about digital infrastructure upgrade, about new portal in the institute, internship and placement, right? What exactly are you going to do in that?
Okay, so first thing is that it's an initiative that has been going on for, I think it's going on for about 2.5 years. So the thing is that we have received funds from the 2018 batch, which will be their batch project. This placement portal is supposed to be a batch.
I know the fact.
You know the facts. So I'll tell you what I'll be adding to this process. So what I'll be doing.
I want to know what is your contribution to the entire.
Okay, my contribution is first, there is a need for a server. So we need to figure out ways on how to procure that server, or next thing is how to still have that portal without that server. That is one. Next thing is that the same problem is also being faced by the internship team. So you need to make sure that the internship team also gets a new portal for their process. Next thing is that this is something that has not been happening over 2.5 years. So I need to figure out a way to make it happen in the next 3 months.
Yeah, everybody has been trying to figure out a way. So why do you think you will be able to do it what the others have not been able to do?
Okay, so I'll tell you that the one big change that is going to, this is something that is already on its way. The first thing is that you make sure that A, the admin is contacting the vendor and not us. B, next thing is that there is an urgent need, because you have to do it in the next 3 months. Otherwise, we found that there could be a lot more. The old portal cannot survive for longer than that. So that is two. Next thing is that we need to find ways to raise funds, and I spoke to the dean students very particularly as to why this is very important and why even if we need a new server, that kind of getting funds from the from the existing account and the other funds won't be enough, and why he needs to pitch in. So he has agreed that yes, that will be the case, and he's willing to pitch in. So these three are my contributions to this. It's more like a follow-up, telling that hey, I'll make sure this is done. It doesn't have to be. I mean, to be fairly honest.
Till what percentage of confidence do you have that this will be implemented for the next upcoming session?
More than confidence, this has to be. So it has. I mean, right now, if you were to say if this were to go on or not, I can't give an exact percentage, right? But this has to happen, because otherwise, if it doesn't happen, I told you the Flash player will not work anymore, and you won't have a portal.
Oh, see, that is what my question is. If it is stuck at the admin side, okay, you need to navigate the admin side and get it done. It's not like something needs to be done from our side as a students representatives, right?
No. We have to make sure. There are actually a few more features that need to be added in comparison to what was there 2.5 years ago. Because 2.5 years ago, you don't have the same number of. You after that you introduced payments from the company side, so you need to have a payment portal there. There are new things that have to be added as well. Then cloning for that, getting it to the internship team is again something different, because the internship team wants a new set of features that is not there in the placement thing. So all those need to be done. It's not something straightforward, but yes, a bulk of this is a follow-up. It's not completely my initiative. It's a follow-up, yes.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's come back to the last two questions. One is, what is the central placement policy document? And then we'll come back to the MS and the B Technic together.
Cool. Okay, so this institute placement policy document is basically, there'll be two copies of the document, one for students, one for companies. So right now, we have a set number of policies that is there. One, some of them needs to be refreshed. Two, it is not exhaustive enough. I'll give you a few examples as to once the introduction of after the introduction of IEEE, a student can actually appear in the placement process, and let's say halfway through he realizes, okay, I don't want this. He can convert back to convert to the IEEE process again, and then he can again sit for placements next year. So what is the policy for that? It's something we are. I mean, we are not proactive about it. We were being reactive about it. So we need some place that where these kind of things are documented. Next thing is that companies are coming up with new ways to hire through competitions, through many more ways. Yes. So those kind of things also need to be documented. So we have to figure out, and not just document it. All these things have to be approved by the board of placement, because we can't just randomly put things there. Right? It has to be approved, and if it's more likely that the board of placement is going to question the rationale behind every policy. So it is going to be a tedious process, but we need a centralized policy document so that someone, when they should be confident that when they download this and read through this, they're more. I mean, let's say they should at least be confident that almost everything that I need is here.
So essentially, you're updating the policy document, which currently exists. You're going to make it more exhaustive.
You're going to make it more exhaustive and make it into two parts: one for the students, one for the companies, and it will be a part of the new portal.
Okay, so you are saying that if the company is not following the policy documents, then you are going to penalize them or whatever, or is it like the company, whatever they do, we still get the people placed, so you will still allow them leeway?
No. Firstly, if a company is not following a policy, you first go and ask them, hey, are you aware of this policy? You are kind of doing something wrong. Please follow. Over there, most companies comply and they follow. If they don't, yes, further actions will be taken.
Okay.
Because that is a policy, it has to be followed.
There is a lot of issues and a lot of leeway being given to a certain set of companies which come on the campus, and there is no policy document for that. Are you going to institutionalize every one of these rules which were working, because there is a gray area? And if you are removing that gray area, do you not see that there might be other issues cropping up?
See, irrespective of, let me take a more philosophical approach over here. You have the Indian Constitution, you have lawyers, there are still
No,
gray
I'm not
areas
talking
that is
about.
present.
No. I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm telling you because you're practically
Ah.
implementing it, you will get practical issues,
No,
right?
you will
It
get practical issues, and
affect
you see, people are always going to figure out a way to skirt through your policies. That is how people work. So yes, you will have gray areas. I'm telling, you're trying to narrow down that gray area with these policies. Yes, when
precisely
you
what I'm
narrow,
asking. If you narrow down the gray areas, do you not think that it will throw up a bunch of other issues? That's what I'm asking you. Have you thought about it?
no, I'm telling the policies will be such that there'll be no issues. See, if there, I don't think of any issues that is going to prop up unless a company is going to explicitly violate it knowingly. And I don't think that any company that comes on campus will ever do that.
Okay, fine. I think Bhanu has a question. Bhanu?
Yeah.
Hello, Siddharth.
Yeah.
My question is regarding internship policies. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I hope you know it. This is regarding the fourth year degree students converted from BTech. Fourth year degree students converted from BTech. Okay. So the new policy says a BTech students who has sit for internships in his third year, right? If he has converted to dual degree, he can sit for internships again, but he cannot apply for day one companies of internships. And he can only sit for the core companies, right?
He can only sit for companies that are relevant to his degree, yes.
Yeah,
which
dual
are not
degree.
from day
So,
one.
yeah, dual degree, so core companies, right?
Correctly.
Right. So, isn't this policy? Say the BTech student has with this policy in mind. Say the BTech students has already sit for internships. Okay, in his third year. Right, he's sitting for again one more year. So doesn't it hamper the chances of the dual degree student who is a dual degree student from his first year?
Okay, yeah. So yes,
and considering the fact that many of the day one companies in internships are mostly non-core.
They are all non-core. They're all non-core.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay, cool. So firstly, this is okay. I'll tell you where this policy comes from. This is a policy which was not set by the internship team at all. It was a policy which came straight from the admin. So these people had no say in that. So what I had a conversation with regarding the stats is that so from last year the number of dual degree students who are sitting in their placements for the second time was a number which is less than 25, and among these students, I mean the number of, not necessarily, I'm telling the number of dual degree students itself who had sat for the internship process in BTech was 25, and the number of students who chose to sit for the internship process for the second time was a number which was less than 15. This is the number I got. So among these students, the particular two branches that come into play here will be Elec and MEC, where their core companies are not in day one, but they're of day one caliber. So the workaround that I suggested to the Dean Acads, and I even confirmed this with the internship team, was that instead of calling it day one, I said we'll create a bucket of companies which potentially can come in day one in placements. I said move it from day one in interns to day one in placements. This was a conversation I think even the current placement team had with the the advisor for internships and placements together, telling how it would explicitly affect. So yes, if we change the definition to that, this confusion will be over. And if at all in the case that this doesn't go through, we'll have to take note of specific names as to students who are actually sitting for the second time, and also have a short list and remove them explicitly. So that is what you could do. But if it's something coming straight from the admin and they're very adamant about not changing it, to be really honest, there is not much that even we as student secretaries can do. The admin is very firm on promoting IEEE. So if something is available to IEEE, it also has to be available to the department dual degree. So in that way, you can't draw distinctions between IEEE and department dual degree. That's going to cause a lot of issues. So the admin has let it flow through, and they are pretty adamant this year. So that is the situation this year, and this is my proposal to fix it. The dean was agreeing to it, but again, if this were to go through a board, let's say you take a vote or you have faculty members involved, them taking a vote, let's say this goes all the way up to the Senate or something, I'm not really sure how professors will react to this. It's going to be a chance of vote, just like how it happens every time.
Okay, I have a couple of quick questions, not a very lengthy one. Just I wanted your opinions. Would you be having a placement head this time? And given the fact that we didn't have an AS earlier year, do you see any sort of a big gap in understanding about what are the AS responsibilities, or has it changed over the years, or do you see the benefit of having a placement head or not?
See, the placement head is a very subjective position one. Next thing is that whether there is a benefit of having a head is not a question you cannot answer with just the name of the position. It depends on who wants to fill that position. So if there is a person who is adding something to the team that the AS and the core team cannot offer put together, yes, there is merit in having the position. If there is something that the person cannot offer adding these people together, I see no merit in having it. So it depends on the person who's applying for it. So I cannot answer for it very generally saying if there is a person X who's applying, so will he be, it depends on that. So that is one thing. Yeah.
No, but I'm asking you, are you open to the possibility that it will be an AS and a placement head? Because I don't think it has been there earlier, right?
Yeah, I'm open to that possibility, yes.
Okay. Okay. And the second thing is, are you open for the internship team handling internships for scholars, like for MSc, MA, MBA, MS and PhD?
Okay, so firstly, till now, if that were to happen, you have to extend the team, because right now the team is very compact, and I don't think the team in its existing, the way it is existing, will be able to handle that extra workload as well. So you'll have to extend the team and do it. And so the next question is going to be the curriculums of the undergraduates and the MTechs. I'm not really sure about the MTechs, but definitely for undergraduates, it warrants the necessity of an internship to graduate. So if that is the similar case with MS and PhD, I don't think that is the case with MS and PhD. So
but even then,
that is that. What would be ideal, in my opinion, is that if you could create a similar branch of an internship team under the RAS, like how it is under the AAS, it would cater to your needs specifically, right? Because the timelines might be different. They would look at different timelines. This would happen at different timelines. So don't you think that is there? And next thing is that the electorate as well, right? I think the RAS and AAS are two positions where the electorate in itself is different. So just like how, though we call it one placement team, there are two parts of it, we could also kind of extend the internship team along those lines and let this part come under AS and that part come under the RAS. That would make more sense in my opinion.
That's okay. What I'm asking you is for other branches, currently only MTech and undergraduates have a requirement for placements, right? So, for internships.
Yeah.
So the BTechs and all might have 3-4 years to apply for the internship, but the MTechs have to apply as soon as they join, right? Right. What about others like MA and MSc and MBA? They are also under you, right?
Yeah, they are also under me.
So do you know whether there is a requirement for them to have an internship or not?
See, as far as MA, they have a separate department-wise internship process that they're planning to host. So the respective team, right now, there is an internship team under MA that is directly under the department legislator of that, of MA. So the internship process for them is going on, just that it's not through the INSTI process. So so that is going on. Regarding MSc, yes, I don't think there is any process going on. If they should be allowed to sit, if you are to ask my opinion, yes, I think they can be allowed to sit, because if MTechs are allowed, and MSc is basically a science extension of MTech, right? It's also a taught program. So if they can be allowed, if you're going to ask me, yes, I'd like them to be allowed to sit in the process.
But then your BTech and MS guy will also be allowed to sit.
Then a BTech plus?
BTech and MS guy will also be allowed to sit for placement.
See, when the BTech plus MS guy is sitting for interns and placements, when he's sitting for interns, he wouldn't have had, the time wouldn't have come where he had to choose he's doing an MS instead of an MTech. So he'll still sit as a BTech or an integrated dual degree student only.
Okay. Okay, fine. I'm done with it.
Siddhartha, can I? Sorry, Ramcharan, can I go and ask a question?
We have planned. How many questions do you have?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Okay, just finish it quick.
Yeah. Siddhartha, I have a question for you. So assume there are certain profiles which are currently not open to institute students during the UG placements, but you feel that those profiles can be open to students. So how would you go about bringing these profiles to the institute?
You mean profiles that don't even come to the institute?
Yeah, that don't even come to the institute, but you feel can come to the institute.
Okay. So firstly, if there is something very significant in these profiles, we are already targeting through. There is a good chance that we are already reaching out to these companies and they have not converted for particular reasons. So we'll kind of have a detailed analysis as to what are those reasons and we'll work upon the reasons. Next thing is that we'll always reach out to the alumni, and which will also be through the IIT MA office and to the INAR Council in general. So that is one way we go about things. Next thing is that we'll look if there is any professor involvement that is possible if it's in the core field, because professors usually tend to have a lot more industrial contacts than there. And as I think you would be aware that the ICSR in general has a very elaborate list of contacts. So if we are able to tap into that, or if someone is volunteering to help us out in that way, that will be great. Then finally, if there is any help from the institute side apart from this, that will also be one of the ways. So these are the 4 or 5 ways in which I could think we could go about it.
Yeah, great. I don't have any follow-ups. That was well answered.
Okay, am I audible?
I don't know who's speaking. Is it Ram sir?
Ramcharan, yeah, Ramcharan is
okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah.
We have one last audience question. There is no name here, so I'll just ask it myself. It's about a DD student from 2018 batch, and they're saying that there's going to be a 1.5 times surge in students appearing for institute internship drive. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, so how do you plan to handle that?
Okay, so firstly, there is a point in my manifesto which is very relevant to this. That is how I plan on dividing the day one into 2 slots. Firstly, what that will do is it will give us an opportunity to increase the number of companies that are coming in day one. So these are typically companies that would not have come to the process because they wouldn't have gotten a day one slot. So these companies will turn up. So you're increasing the number of companies there, and you're also reducing overlaps by slotting them, because a student who's placed in the first slot won't be appearing for the process in the second slot. So the number of companies in one slot will be lesser than what is already happening in day one. So yes, you will have less overlaps and more students being placed. That is one. Next thing is that internships is not just day one. It is throughout the process. It is the entire odd semester, and there is some parts of the even semester as well. So throughout the process, we need to make sure that there is significant momentum that is being maintained. Otherwise, it usually tends to be an exponential decay of offers post that. So because we have companies one after the other, but there'll be no overlaps, but you need to have enough companies to actually give you the offer. So what I plan is to involve the placement team in the outreach as well, because there are a lot of companies that come for placement but that don't come for internships. So if we are able to also involve these companies in the internship process, and if you have you have very specific material saying that, hey, this year we have a 1.5x surge in students, which means that there is 1.5x surge in smart students as well, which companies consider smart. I think everyone is smart, but there is a set number of students where companies think they are smart, right? So there's a surge in that as well. So there's more incentive for companies to come. So if they are more, if they have more pool of students to choose from, I am pretty sure they'll come in. So that's how we increase the number of companies as well. And also companies that are coming, we'll kind of tell them how they can give more offers and why it is a good idea to give more offers at least this particular year. So if you're going to be doing all of this, I think it will take care of the surge.
Okay. So I think we have all the audience questions are also asked. So we'll end this box with one last question. The same question that we asked yesterday in the HASO box. So what are the self-accountability measures that you would like to take For example, as an executive council member, you are constitutionally mandated to be accountable to the student legislative council. You've been a legislator yourself. So in case you do not submit the reports in time, what punishment would you like to be given to you?
Okay. So firstly, okay. So firstly, yes, that as there is definitely some amount of apology I would have to owe to people. That will be the first step. The second step would be some amount of disciplinary action that is there, because I believe submitting things on time is a disciplinary thing. So whatever disciplinary action is bound by that, whatever the SLC decides to give for that, I will have to take it up. So that will be, it's up to the decision of the SLC, right? So I'll leave it to them. Who am I to decide my own punishment?
No, I mean, it's a hypothetical question. Obviously, you will not decide what punishment you would get. Given that there are only, you know how many people are applying for legislator this year, right?
I am not sure of the exact number, but I know the number is
around 30.
Yeah.
Now, 30 people are applying for 19 positions. So it will be understaffed. So if they're not able to like go and do the measures to hold you accountable, you should hold yourself accountable, right? That was, what will you do for that?
So yes, in that case, probably take up extra work in the admin, let's say library hours, something which, see, it would be parallel to whatever it comes under academic disciplinary committee. Let's say you do something that is late, whatever is entitled for that, yes. But if the consequences of the mistake are very large, let's say instead of submitting reports late, if it has some other big consequences, yes, I will. I think not giving me the certificate of doing this position is a valid punishment. Which is equivalent to resignation.
Okay. We can end the soapbox with that. I'd like to thank everybody who has attended this session, and I'd also like to thank Jaswin for the great moderation. We'll have the soapbox for International Alumni Relations Secretary with Sarthak Marathe, who is the candidate, at 8 p.m. The links have been sent on Ismail as well. Please do join that. I'd also like to thank Siddharth for being patient and answering all the questions and being prompt with sending his PPTs or being in the session on time. And the election is on April 7th. We have also posted a voting tutorial. You can go check that out, and please do vote on the election day. Thanks to everybody. You can leave the session now.
Thank you.